Okay, so this is then the fifth video, I guess it is, and here we'll take a look at materials. So every single object that I've created in Maya starts out with the initial shading group, which is the way that Maya connects materials to geometry. So the initial shading group has this thing called the Lambert 1, and Lambert is a matte material. So you should know, if you change the Lambert 1, you change all the objects that has this material assigned. So you're not changing materials on an object as such, you're changing a material that is assigned to a number of objects. So to create new materials, there's a couple of different ways. You can right click and go assign new material, and or you can go assign favorite material, or you can go to the rendering shelf. And in the rendering shelf, there's these presets here. So we have the anisotropic material, we have the blend material, we have the Lambert material, we have Fung, we have Fung E material, and some other ones. So I'll just focus on the blend material right now, and I'll assign the blend material to just the roof here. So I go blend while this is selected, and that will actually create a blend and assign. You can see it became shiny here. So the blend material, generally for all materials, they have these common material attributes, and then if it's a specular material, a material with reflections and shininess, etc., they will have a specular shading area section. It depends on each material what they do. So, but for most material, the common material attributes will be the same. So there's color, transparency, ambient color, incandescence, bump mapping, diffuse, translucence, translucence depth, and translucence focus. Translucence is not used that much at the moment. The tendency seems to be that if people want to use or create translucency effects, they will be more inclined to use subsurface scattering or something like that. But that is more of a rendering thing. But in here you can see that we have the color settings. So if I click this, I can give it a color like nice purple or something like that. And there's also these mapping buttons out here, and these will give you the opportunity to assign a texture of some sort to the surface. So if I click here, I get this Create Render Node window, and it has highlighted by default the 2D, 3D, and other textures. So these are the ones that are listed. 2D textures are patterns or files, and 3D textures are volumetric definitions, and then the other ones are different other kinds, like layered shade or layered texture, etc. For this thing here, I'll just for fun use a classic checker. So I grab that, and you can see I have now assigned a checker, and I can navigate my material here by these two arrows up here. So I'll go that way, and you can see it's a checker, but there's nothing in the viewport. And that is because textures are not turned on. I can use this button up here, or I can press 6 on the keyboard, and that will turn on textures. And we can see how textures are assigned to the models. Now this is a NURBS model, so that is a little special because they are square, and thus you can't really change the way textures are applied to it. You can tweak them, but really that's not what I'm going to show here. That's not the interesting part. So I'll just leave that for now, and then I'll just grab, let's see, these two down here, and then I'll go right click and go assign existing blend 1, and that will assign that same material to these two polygon objects. And this one up here, I'll just assign a different one, maybe a Fung material, and make that slightly white. There we go. So it looks nice and shiny. Now the texture object, you can see it looks a little, it doesn't look too good. Depending on your graphics card, you can choose to go to high quality mode, so it draws it a little nicer there, although you can see that the subdivision here looks a little weird. Or you can go to viewport 2.0, which, there we go, draws it even nicer. So this is Yeah, there's a few limitations to viewport 2.0, but for texture work it looks really good. So let's take a look at how this thing is textured here. So just looking at this one, so I'll just go isolate select and look at that. And you can see how the texture is applied here. So you can see that there's a texture on the side, and then there's one on the top and the bottom. If I go to my polygon menu set, and then I go to edit UVs, UV texture editor, it can also be accessed in window, UV texture editor, it's the same thing. I get this. And you can sort of see what's going on here, but it's a little easier if I dim the image, and if I turn on shading, like so. So you can see what this is UVs are essentially extra information on the surface, or on the points of the surfaces, that contain information not just about where they are in 3D space, but also where they should reference their color information in a 2D texture map. And there can actually be multiple of those on each point, so we can have what's called UV sets, but I'm just going to look at one UV set at the moment. So as we go in here, and let's see, I'll just grab a face here just to see. Yeah, this is the top part. So this is what I want. So I'll just go back to object, select there, and right click and go UV. So if I select these UVs here, so I'll just select one UV, right click and go select shell. So that should select shell. There we go. I don't know what happened in the first one. So if I move this now, you can see I'm actually changing where it's referencing its texture information. So I can put it anywhere I like. And generally what you want to do when you're doing UV mapping like this is to have a layout that makes sense according to the size of the object. So the top and the bottom is sort of okay, but the side here, that is totally out of whack, because this is like very long thin lines, and here they are really tall thingies. So what I could do is like grab these UVs and then drag them closer together like so. You can see some of them will be black and some of them will be white, and etc. But what I can also do, depending on the model, is to do some sort of projection. So just arrange this so you can see what's going on. Go to create UVs with these objects selected, and then I can use different types of projections. So one that is relatively nice is the one called automatic mapping. So if I grab that, what it'll do is it'll project from a number of planes, as you can see here, and create a layout based on that. And this will be based on the relative size of the object as well. So you can see that this will create a nice set of pieces. You can see that these pieces here are actually the part going around, but what I can do here is actually sew them together. So go edge, grab an edge here, and what you should see is that this edge here is actually the same edge as this one down here, or this one is the same one as that one over there. So if I select this and I use this button called move and sew, what it'll do is it'll stitch those two together. And let's see, I'll just do these two here and then stitch those. There you go. So now I've made these stitched together. And one thing you want to do when you're UV layouting like this is that you generally want to have as few pieces as possible, and you want them to be distorted as little as possible. And when I say distorted, I'm referring to the shape of the UV layout compared to the shape of the model. So for something like a face, you have to decide how you will line up things, because you usually want a good deal of detail in the facial area around the nose and the eyes. at the same time, that is the area of the face where there's the most wrinkles and what I'm talking about, more the most protrusions and stuff that can be a little difficult to work with. So it's something you'll have to work with, and of course a good deal of experience helps. Now this has to be within the 0 to 1 area, okay, and I could of course go and say like UVs and well, this will just deform it, but I can use this little button here that will move a shell at a time. So I could arrange this all by myself and get this into the area. But I want to maximize the UV space used, because that will let me keep textures relatively smaller and still have good quality. So what I can do is use a layout method. So I'll just grab UVs, grab all of them, and go to polygons, layout, options. And what I'll do is I'll set them to single or multiple non-overlapping, so I don't want them to overlap. I want to use prescale, either object or world. It's not so important in this case. I'll just set this to world. And I want the scale mode to be uniform, so I don't want it to like squash certain areas to fit them in there. They should shell stack based on shape, so this is the shape instead of the bounding box, which is just a box around it. And it should be allowed to rotate these by 90 degrees. I don't want it to rotate by arbitrary number. So if I do this and I press apply, you can see it tries to maximize it. So this actually looks good, and you can push this a couple of times and it'll create a slightly different solution. This percentage space is calculated, so it will make a little space between based on a map setting. So this will assume that the map will be 512 by 512 or bigger actually. So it has enough space in here for this area to have a pixel all on its own and this area to have a pixel all on its own, so it won't create a crosstalk or cross blending between different parts, which would be a problem. Generally keep this at a point where you have enough space, like so, and then make sure that your map is plenty bigger. So if I wanted this maybe a 1K map, then I had plenty of in between. It's also a question if you wanted to paint this texture in Photoshop. You don't want this to be so tight that you are accidentally painting across borders and things like that. So okay, so this creates a UV layout, and you can see that what I get in this case is I get something that looks fairly nice. The sizes of the lines here matches up pretty well. So what I would see is that the detail level of this area and this area is about the same. So if I was using a pixel image, I would see the same sharpness here and here. And this is one of the big things when you're going for a nice quality. Actually, it's better that everything is equally bad, if you like, than something being good and something being bad, because that will trigger the brain going like, what is going on there? So if this is blurry and this is blurry, then it's okay, but if this is sharp and this is blurry, then everything goes wrong. So you don't want that. Okay, let's that was just a short introduction to UV mapping. Of course you can use other options, like you can use a planar, you can use a planar mapping, so just map one part of it. You can use a cylindrical mapping to map cylinders, spherical mapping, or you can map from the direction of the camera, so it will just paste it on from here, something like that. But automatic mapping for simpler objects works really well. For more advanced objects, you need a plan. And what you can do in the UV texture editor, I'll just mention this quickly, we'll look at it at a later stage because it's a little more advanced. You can actually do what is often referred to as pelting. You can you can relax the tension between points here compared to the space in world space, so that will make the relative shapes or sizes here correspond better to the world space, which is actually what you want. And you can also do an unfold, which is this tool called smooth, funny enough, but this is actually unfold and smooth. So this is one of the big tools here. So you just go to that, I'll just go with UV, grab that. So you can see this, now I get this unfold thing here, I just grab and then start unfolding. So this is already unfolded, so it doesn't matter. But if I smooth it, you can see that it'll, or relax it, it'll like curl up in a little thing, so it's not really that useful. Yeah, back to the material. So in this case, what you can do is right click and go material attributes, and that'll pop up the material over here. So this is the color, and I mean the materials, you can stack on everything you like. So if you just go to the hypershade here, you can see, ooh, this has a lot of stuff here. So I just go and grab this material here and press this in and output connections, and I get that over here. So you can see I have my material and I have my checkerboard, but I can actually have a lot of stuff going on there. So just go clear the graph. Okay. Yes, this new node editor down here. So if I grab that, you can see this is the new way of displaying things, which is nice in a lot of ways, since I can now unfold this and I can see that, okay, this goes to color. That's also unfolded and see all of the stuff that I can also use. And I navigate here like in the viewport with Alt and middle mouse button. So this will show how things are going around, and I can just click things here and drag them over here, etc. So for instance, if I wanted to create a bump map with this, I can either grab my material and I can middle mouse button drag this into the bump map. Oh, sorry, up here, middle mouse button drag to bump map. So that will, if you can just see this slightly bumpy thing here, I'll just change the color a little bit so that there's a little shading. So there you go. So you can see now it gets this bumpy feeling. So it's like there's like a small structure there. This is not the perfect thing to do. So what I'll do is I will disconnect this, break connection, and I'll make this more dark again, and then I use a different texture for the bump mapping. So I grab bump, click the map button here, and bump is it looks nice if I create like a noisy thing. So for instance, I'll go fractal here, and it just has to think for a second. Okay, and you can see I get this very it looks almost like some sort of rock, and I can turn down the bump depth here to make it less extreme. Often I think it looks better when it's not so intense. So I get this, and this creates the illusion that there is structure in the surface. The surface is still totally flat, but it just changes the shading of the surface, so it tries to imitate a structure in the surface. And this way this is one of the very cheap and efficient ways to create visual complexity without actually having to create a 10 billion vertex model that will kill every machine around. So bump mapping is very, very good. There's also different types of bump mapping. You can also use normal mapping, either tangent space or object space. A quick way to explain this is tangent space is based on the surface itself, object space is based on the surface. So tangent space will work when models are deforming, and object space will only work for like rigid models. Yeah. If you can get away with an object space normal, you'll save a slight amount of computation. But I really most people tend to use the tangent space normal method, or in this case the bump, which basically white will have the feeling of coming out of the surface, and black will seem like an indentation, and I can just change it so it flips the other way, something like this. And this is the fractal, which is just a mathematical pattern, and I can change it with this amplitude thing as well. I can change the threshold of this so you can animate funny things. I can change the ratio of how much noisiness there is, minimum level, so you can see this creates more detail, but maybe at the expense of becoming slightly more noisy. I can also bias it either the one or the other way. So this can be animated to create like the effect of something like eroding, or create inflection as well. So this inflection will tend to work more like get more like a cloudy effect. And here there's the time animation, so you can animate this maybe to create like a swamp thing, if you like. So that's texturing. There's a lot of these. So for instance, if I, instead of this, wanted to use an image, I'll just go to material attributes and I right click here and go break connection. So this should go, yeah, gray. And then I click the button here and I go file texture. I can also use PSD if I have a layer PSD, and I can then select different layer groups if I wanted to do that, but I prefer using files. And there you go, so it creates a file texture, and I get this little yellow button here, so I can select the texture. I just need to grab something. I have something on my desktop. Let's see what we have here. We have just grab maybe something that will look, this looks fairly okay. Okay, so you can see here I'm getting this part of the image that is it's just the part that is defined by the UV set. So you can see I'm getting this part up here, and this is what's oh, actually it's the opposite way. This is this part here, and the other thing is on the other side. So that way you can work with the image textures, and it looks rather nice. Let's look at the material. Transparency, ambient color, incandescence, eccentricity will tighten up the highlight. Actually, let's bring back the other part of the model, and then just take a look at the fung here, because it uses this thing called a cosine power instead. So you can see this tightens the highlight more or less, the color of the highlight. Reflectivity, this is a rendering parameter, etc. If I use a blend instead on this, you can see that this one uses eccentricity to create control the size of the highlight, and specular roll-off to control like the concentration of it, and again highlight color and reflectivity. So it's the same sort of thing. And you need to create a material for each part of your model that you want to have a different sort of look. If you have to export this to an external engine, then you should be aware that that most engines will require you to redo your material creation in that engine. Like a UDK, you have to create a UDK material. It's more or less the same with the Unity, although you can get something across. But the UV mapping and texturing part will come across. So that part you need to do in your 3D application before you export it, because that is something you just send across, and then the material will be created in the other application. So that was it for a quick rundown on materials and some UVs. So the next thing we'll do is we'll do the cracker box exercise.